That was a great performance. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Welcome to Pink and Purple right here on ZTV with myself, Princess Mpofu. And today we're talking about young women in leadership. Joining me in the studio to help me talk about this topic is Mantate Mlotshwa. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Princess.
You look amazing, by the way. I love your shoes. Can I have your shoes?
No, you can't have them, but thank you.
All right, so tell me more about yourself. Who is Mantate?
I think Mantate is what you would call a version of female leadership, which is basically the personal vision I have to role model female leadership in Africa.
Okay.
So I think I'm more of building young women for political leadership, building young women for community development, and just identifying how women can be more involved in decision-making processes.
All right. What inspired you, rather, to get into leadership?
I think the biggest mistake actually launched my career, if I should put it that way. You know, when you're talkative, everyone expects you to be a leader. So from a very young age, I was always that talkative one who gets to be class monitor in class. And then jump into high school, I was in debate and public speaking automatically. That pulled me into junior parliament. So from high school, where everyone expected you to take over because you can speak in front of people, leadership just became a thing. And then later on, exposure to other leadership platforms beyond speaking actually helped me realize, no, this is my space and I want to pursue it.
Anyway, and you were so young when you got into leadership. What are some of the challenges that you faced as a young girl, rather?
I think the biggest challenge is the fact that I'm a girl. So normally when you tell people you want to do this, especially in politics, they're like, well, you're a woman, so you're not likely to make it. So I think that's the kind of motivation that I've always had, that if no woman has done it, why can't I do it? I can't stop dreaming just because the world says women can't do it. So rather show them that it's done this way, next time they'll be saying something different. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Other challenges that come along the way, there's not so much opportunities in Zim. I mean, we live in a space where economically opportunities are not there. You want to go outside Zimbabwe for a program. if it's not fully funded, you can't go because your country can't fund you. So it's one of those things where you constantly have to source funds for yourself. If you're doing projects as well, you need to identify people with the money. Yes. Sometimes they don't want to help you. So it's really that struggle to pull it together in a space where it's really saying no.
Right. And you've traveled a lot. You've gone to Austria, you've been to Johannesburg, you've been to Ethiopia, right? Tell me more about that.
Okay, so part of the development programs that I'm involved in actually involves traveling, because it's networking opportunities where you meet other young people. So I went to Ethiopia last year in August for a Young African Thinkers Convention, which was done in Addis Ababa at the AU headquarters. So the idea is to bring in young people from across Africa to say the African Union has an Agenda 2063 for Africa. How does the young person come in? So you identify weaknesses within the AU structure and say, as young people, this is how we come on board to help you. And then I went to Austria in September of that same year for Generation Democracy. It was a global summit for over 34 young people from across Africa, Asia, and Europe. So the idea is to say, how do young people fit into the democracy topic? Because we're coming from a global perspective that says we need to push for democracy. We don't have it. There's this paper theory of democracy that's not working for anyone. So the question is, as we're building a new generation of leaders, how do we define democracy in a way that's contextual to Zimbabwe, that can work in Africa and also in Asia? And then South Africa, we've been there a lot. I mean, it's our neighbor, so we go there for visits. But just recently, I was at the Young African Leaders Initiative in South Africa. It's a 4-week program under the USAID. The idea, again, is to bring in 135 young people from across 14 Southern African countries. And we're saying that, how do we build you for the future of Africa? Because Africa has a very young population. So we can't ignore the fact that the future is young. So we need to prepare young people for that future, which I think starts today, because today is the future that I was talking about yesterday. So that's the kind of space that I've been exposed to. I've also been to West Africa. That was like my first trip outside like the Southern Africa, where we're saying, it was a Impact Africa Debate Championship. I was in school then. Where we're saying, as young people, again, how do we define Africa? So I think for me, all these experiences, traveling and stuff, it's been about the Africa we want as young people. How do we take ownership and how do we take it home to build it in a way that at the end of the day, it's young people taking leadership everywhere.
Okay, that is a lot of information, and you've been to so many countries. Now, when we come back from this ad break, we're going to talk more about the challenges that Zimbabwean women in leadership face, and what can be done, what the society can do to try and help us overcome those challenges. So do stay with us. Thank you for choosing us. You're still tuned into Pink and Purple, where we're talking about young women in leadership. Now, Mantate, earlier on before the break, you mentioned that you faced some challenges as a young woman. Now, we know that Africa is a highly patriarchal continent, right? And we can't run away from the fact that people still don't accept women that are in leadership, right? What are some of the biggest challenges that women who've managed to take up leadership positions are facing?
All right, I think one of the biggest issues that I've been exposed to as well is the issue of sextortion. It's a new word in the dictionary, but what it simply means is that you need to give of yourself in exchange for a service. For instance, if I want a job, if I want a political position, I need to sleep with someone to get to the top. That kind of mentality, even in universities, a thigh for a mark, it's becoming so normal in the community. And I think it's a challenge because there are some women that have made it without literally sleeping with anyone. Yes. But because the narrative that stands is that you need to sleep with someone to get to the top. So people think, okay, the women that are in politics actually sluts. I think you've heard it before. Yes. Where people talk about how whoever slept with someone else to make it, which is a challenge also for me as a young woman, because I'm already thinking, what will people say about me if I jump into politics? They'll think, okay, I'm sleeping with someone else. I think that is a challenge. And then the other challenge that I've been working very closely with women that are running for office right now. The challenge they have is that as women, they don't have resources. In the communities that they're coming from, especially in the rural areas, it's the men that have the economics, the ones that are running the communities, basically. So when women want to then take a position, there's no one to support them financially or to resource their campaigns or whatever that they want to do. I think that's a challenge for women. And the other thing is the issue of education, especially among the women in the rural communities and even here in the towns, where a lot of our mothers are not really educated. So when you're bringing in opportunities that require them to be, it becomes a challenge for them to access. For instance, if the bank comes with a loan, It's so hard for a woman in the rural areas or woman in Kulumane to actually come up and access that loan because the requirements require you to understand the policies that are there, the terms and conditions and whatsoever. So I think that's a big challenge for a lot of our women.
Yes, yeah, that's a very, actually, it's discriminating as well to know that people think that someone who's into politics, they get to the top by sleeping with other men. But it's true, because some women actually do that. But what needs to be done? What is it that society can do to try and change the way people think and change that mentality?
I think, like I said earlier, that it's always best to show them how it's done. If you have a problem with the way the system is running, show them how it's the alternative. We can't keep saying this is not the way things are supposed to be done. The question is, how are things supposed to be done? So I think that's one of the challenges that I feel a lot of women should take up. Or you're saying, I want to redefine the narrative around women leadership. So if it's politics, if it means integrity, accountability, and transparency, I want to show people how female leaders can be. I think if we have that level role modeling in women, among women, and also women should support each other. I think we're the ones that perpetrate exactly. Yeah. If someone is in position, we're the girls that actually say, oh, but, like someone else is sleeping with who. So I think if the conversations change within our small circles, where we stop talking, there's a PhD syndrome that we're trying to do within the community, pull her down syndrome. How about we uplift her for a change? So I think it's about the woman choosing to be different, choosing to defy the norm and saying, no, this is not how all women lead. We don't all sleep our way to the top. And also as women, as girls, let's support each other, because we actually talk with this man behind those women, and we talk about how she's sleeping with whatever. But the men don't care. In their small circles, we talked about it the other day, where we're like, these men who seem like they hate each other in public, they drink together. Their bodies in other spaces. So as women, if we don't unite together to uplift each other, the guys are not going to do it for us. So it's that moment where we need to really support each other. And the other thing, guys, the ladies must push education, push professional careers, because we can't keep saying women are not this, women are not that, when women are pushing other things about the fashion, looking good and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you might look good for that guy, but at the end of the day, he's going to marry the girl who's educated. We live in a community where it's about the certificate, it's about the job you're doing, it's about how independent you are. So I think we should do our best to pursue what develops us independent of men. I think that's when we're able to call the shots.
Okay. You also mentioned the issue of resources not being enough or not being availed to women, right? What is it that can be done to make sure that women get enough resources to push their agendas without actually having to maybe sleep with men to get what they want?
All right. So I wouldn't say that they're not availed to women. I think the thing is we don't normally bother. Like, for instance, I'm a young woman and I've done so much already. I've accessed a lot of those opportunities, and people keep saying there are no opportunities outside them, within them. It's about being able to network. You need to be able to research. Research is the best way to do it. People ask me, how do you travel? It's online. An application is open. You're online all the time. Instead of you being on Facebook all the time, why don't you check out the stuff, the opportunities that are there? There's always that fear that I don't qualify. Just go for it. If you don't get it the first time, one day you will. So I think it's an issue of networking. Look for people that are able to build you. I think as women, the other thing we lack is the kind of social spaces that uplift us. If you don't have a friend who's doing it big, don't expect you to do it big. You need to push each other. This is one of the things I always say about myself, that in the future, when I get married, I would want a team of bridesmaids of girls that have made it, even if it means importing my girls from outside. That's the kind of space I want. An environment where there are women who are doing it big and continually pushing me forward. So I think it's that kind of space. In terms of resources as well, I think we tell ourselves that you can only make a difference when you have the money. While you don't have the money, the question is, what are you going to be doing? So I think it's one of those things where you don't always need money to do a lot of those things. Like, for instance, I've run a lot of project capacity building workshops for girls and young people. I don't always have the money to do everything. You just identify someone who's pushing the same agenda as you, who's established, and you say, this is what I want to do, this is what I can do for you. And if we team up, this is what's going to happen. It's a win-win situation where someone comes with their resources, you come in with the expertise or the networks, and then you do it together. So it doesn't kill to share a dream with someone else. While you're waiting for the money to locate you, which won't happen, you need to keep pushing something. So I think as women, we need to be smart around the resources that are there in the country. Let's tap into the opportunities that are there and not be scared to say, I don't qualify.
Right. You're so young, but you've done quite a lot of things. You've done a lot of campaigns, like the 5x5 campaign. Now, tell me, what are some of the different leadership roles that you've taken up?
Well, I think mostly it's within different organizations. I was once a youth chair for Ambassadors of Integrity, which is a youth program under Transparency International Zimbabwe. And how I joined, it's one of those things where they had a camp, a training facility that was launching the program. My friend just told me there's a trip to Matopo. Do you want to come? And I think I like things, so I went. And then I'm outspoken. I don't hide myself. If I'm good at this, I show it. So I think it's one of those things where in the program they noticed, okay, this child can talk, this child can do this. And later on, when they had something else, they invited me. So I constantly attended their workshop, their trainings. And then soon I joined their team and then became a chairperson of that team. And then also with the Women's Institute for Leadership Development Trust, where I work right now, I started off as a consultant. I came in to help them with team building for their young women. So they had a mentorship program going on for women in politics. I'll come in, do team building training for the MPs and councillors. Then later on, they're like, okay, can we have you full time? So it was one of those things when you start off as a volunteer, start off as a consultant, and then later on you come in on board full time. But I think for other things that I've been doing, it's a lot of things. You can check it out on my Facebook. I'm all over Facebook, Twitter as well. It's all there. I've worked with Youth for Christ as well. So with Youth for Christ, it was a 6 months voluntary contract where we're using creative arts to push positive behavior change among young people. And I ended up as a team leader for that creative arts group. And then later on joined a Dutch group that came from Netherlands in a 3-week program at Sekwadini, where we're building a vocational training center. So it's one of those things where if an opportunity comes and I'm good at something, I go for it. I'd rather spend my time doing something, even if it's voluntary. Later on, it's going to launch me to something that will pay me.
Well, you've done a lot, and I do hope that a lot of young women who are watching actually are learning something from you and they are inspired by what you do. Now, after the break, we'll play a little game that we play here every week, and we'll also get to talk more about the differences between leadership between men and women, and maybe to hear from you who's a better leader, a man or woman, right now. So do stay with us. Welcome back to the third and final segment of Pink and Pepper, where we get to play a little game, the quick tease. So, Mantate, you pick a question from this ball, and then you get to answer the question. No question will go unanswered, okay?
Okay. I hope it's not hard.
It's just easy questions.
Okay.
All right. Your first question says, what was your worst stage moment?
Worst stage moment?
Yes.
I can't even remember.
You've never been on stage anywhere?
I've been a lot of times. I don't remember being.
And it's been all smooth?
Not small per se. I think every stage has a nervous 3 seconds before you start your performance. So I don't remember any. Can I pick another question instead?
Sure. Okay. All right. It says, if you were to pick a celebrity, if you were to pick celebrities to be your parents, who would you choose and why?
Yo, that's complicated. Can a president be a celebrity?
I think so.
Well, I think I'll take Michelle Obama and her husband because I think for me, with Michelle specifically, I love the way she carries herself. Before she's even the president's wife, the way she just carries herself for me is very inspiring.
Yes, and she's a strong and independent woman. That's something
I mean, we all have to be at some point.
Okay. It says, what would you do if you were invisible for a day?
I would sleep. Probably it's the only time I get to rest because I don't get much of that. Yeah.
Out of you'd sleep.
Yeah.
You love sleep.
By the time I come back, I'll get back to my normal schedule. So I think I'll just take a nap.
Okay. All right. It says, okay, tell me 3 best things about you.
I'm honest. Well, sometimes blunt. And then the other thing is I'm unapologetically myself.
I like that.
And then the last thing is I'm very outspoken. So you get it as it is. How many more questions?
I don't know until my production manager says it's enough.
Okay.
If you could ask your pet 3 questions, what would they be?
If I could what?
Ask your pet 3 questions. What would you ask?
If you were me for a day, what would you do?
Okay, that's one.
And then if you had to choose a favorite song, what would it be?
Okay.
The last one, what's your favorite food?
Do you have a pet?
No. So I won't have to ask anyone or anything like that.
Right. Okay. Now, earlier on, I highlighted that we'll talk about the differences between leadership between men and women. Now, tell me, what's the difference when you're looking at a man and a woman in leadership? What's the difference?
I think for me, it's an issue of interest and representation. If you're going to put a man in office, he's going to represent the interests of men in general.
Okay.
When you're putting a woman, she's going to push the interest and represent the interests of a child, a mother, a girl.
Husband.
So you see, with women, I think it comes back to more than just herself. It's about the children that she's raising. It's about the interests of the community. She keeps the family together. She keeps the community together. So I think for me, the difference, there's nothing of this is a better leader than the other one when we're talking of gender. I think it's about each person representing the interests of another group. Then the kind of leader that we want now is a leader who looks at the interests of both. Because I think for men, for instance, right now, if I was to talk about access to sanitary wear, it's not something that men would generally
Actually want to
champion.
talk about. They don't even want to talk about
exactly.
such things.
It's not any type of leader would want to talk about that. But put a woman there, they'll talk about circumcision. For instance, we don't have a problem with that because we've had sons that had to go through the process. So I think it's about getting that balance of being able to look at myself, my needs as a woman, but also looking at the other person as well.
All right. Now, you're a young woman who's done exceptionally well in your career. What advice would you give to a young woman who's trying also to maybe make it in life? Not per se in leadership, but in life generally.
I think the one thing I always tell girls that I meet is that go for it. I think that's the main thing. I think all of us have something going on inside of us that says, this is what I want. This is what I want to be. You don't have to wait for someone to do it to know that you can do it too. And then the other thing is it's always good to have a role model, but don't build your life in trying to be someone else, because we normally have, this is my role model, I want to be her. But the fact that you're different means that you started from different places. So you're definitely going different places. You can't do things the same way. So I think it's always good to sit down and say, this is Mantate, this is what I want to be. Find that person has done this, I'm inspired by that. Just look at that and leave it there and say, what kind of Mantate am I building? I think it's also okay to be your own role model. Picture yourself this way, then build yourself into it. That's the kind of advice I always give girls.
All right. Now, how do people get in touch with you? Someone who wants advice on how to be a young leader or how to make it in any of their areas in life. What advice? How do they get in touch with you?
You can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Mantate Mlotshwa, which basically highlights my leadership. And then I also have a Facebook account, Mantate Mlotshwa, but I prefer people follow the page because, Facebook account has to be personal. And also I have a Twitter handle, it's at Mantate Queeneth. I'm very active on Twitter, but I also have a blog that people can check out. It's called The Radical Mantate, but if you want the specific website, it's www.theradicalmantate.blogspot.com. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Okay, Mantate, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
And I do wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And at home, thank you so much for tuning into Pink and Purple. From myself, Princess Zimbabwe, and the crew behind the scenes, it's goodbye.